Hey guys, Razorblade Mango here, and today I'm going to be talking about The Last of Us Part 2, which is the latest game from Naughty Dog, published by Sony Interactive Entertainment, one of the two swan songs for the PlayStation 4 era as far as Sony PS4 exclusives go. Warning right off the bat, there will be spoilers. In order to talk about why I feel the way I feel about this game, I need to get into the big things that Naughty Dog and Sony have been trying to hide about this game for a number of years. And if you haven't heard the game, what happens in it, if you haven't seen any of the leaks, then I suggest that you do not watch this video, because I will be spoiling the big thing that happens in the beginning and what happens in the second half of the game. I'm not going to give away every little spoiler, but some of the big ones definitely are here. So if you have just a general spoiler alert right there, because it's almost impossible to talk about this game in a way that's actually worth the shit without mentioning the spoilers. I don't know why these stupid mainstream critics took that deal from Sony where they couldn't even talk about half the game and then just threw out like 10s out of 10s and shit. And it's like, okay. But they did. They took it. But I'm under no obligation to do that. I'm under no obligation to hide Naughty Dog's secrets. And I'm not going to. So, this game has been controversial for a number of reasons, and discussing this game online is like walking through a minefield blindfolded. You're eventually going to hit something, and it's just going to blow up in your face. And that already sounds like every conversation you could potentially have on the internet about something, about anything. It's the internet. Somebody's going to get pissed off at you for something, for everything. But it's been so explosive with The Last of Us Part 2, and I just want to make it clear to people out there, especially longtime people, is that I hope you don't come to this channel hoping that I just regurgitate what a lot of people say. I'm hoping you actually come to this channel because you want to hear my own personal experience and opinion with the game. And the reason I'm prefacing it with that is because I absolutely loved The Last of Us Part 2. I think it is one of Naughty Dog's crowning achievements, and easily my favorite PS4 exclusive released by Sony in years. I think, honestly, this might be next to Bloodborne and maybe Horizon Zero Dawn. This might be my favorite PlayStation 4 exclusive from Sony this generation. I mean, I thought it was stellar. And to me, I think it's pretty safe to say at this point that this is the last Jedi of video games. And what I mean by that is where there is this enormous divide between mainstream critics and what they thought of it versus fan reception. There's just this big gap. Except this time, unlike The Last Jedi, I'm actually on the side of the people who love it. Playing this game and seeing the negative reaction to it is like walking a mile in another man's shoes. I mean, now I understand now how big fans of The Last Jedi feel. So, with this video, I'm mainly going to be talking about the story and why it worked for me. Look, it's a Naughty Dog game. For me to talk about how amazing the graphics are, and how stellar the performances are, and how beautiful the atmosphere and art direction are would be boring. You've heard it before. It's obvious. It's a Naughty Dog game. Those things are going to be what they're going to be. So I mainly just want to talk about the story, because that seems to be the thing that everybody is just jumping down Naughty Dog's throat about. But I loved it. It's got problems. It's not perfect, but I loved it, and I respect the hell out of Naughty Dog for doing what they did with this game. And truth be told, I didn't have anything spoiled for me before I played it. I didn't see a single leak, even in passing, or directly somebody told me what happens. I didn't have it spoiled for me at all. And I'm fortunate that I did that. That I got through those months where it got leaked unscathed. And I think that's an unintended benefit of trying to remove myself from social media for like the last couple of months, like trying to take a step back because I didn't have the game spoiled for me. But one of the most disappointing things, honestly, about this game is that for me, all the shocking, quote, shocking, unquote, and quote, divisive, unquote, moments that Naughty Dog and all the people who saw the leaks were hyping up really weren't shocking nor divisive for me at all. Aside from maybe one thing, I saw all of those twists coming a mile away. And in the case of, this is where I'm going to get into it, in the case of Joel's death, I called that years ago. And I don't understand how anyone could not have seen that coming. With the way the editing and all the trailers was being done, to where Naughty Dog was being coy about what this traumatic event that Ellie was going to go through was going to be. The fact they didn't even want to say whether Dina lives or dies or not. And even also, I remember this, I was in the audience for this when there was a Last of Us Part 2 panel. I think it was at the PlayStation 2017 experience. And the panel moderator asked Neil Druckmann specifically, is Joel dead? And rather than saying yes or no, there's like a clear-cut answer. Neil Druckmann was like, well, it's like he's like pussyfooting around the question. And I thought, yeah, Joel's dead. That has to be it. I couldn't think of anything else that they would want to hide and be this coy about that would send Ellie off on this warpath. And I fully support Naughty Dog's decision to kill Joel in the opening. And it made sense to me because I knew Joel was a beloved character, but I didn't know he was this beloved to the point where people would see his murder in this game as like a betrayal to the fan base. And I don't think it's a betrayal because Joel is not a good person. He may have done good things in order to protect Ellie, but he is not a good person. And what he does at the end of the first game is fully explored. The consequences of it are fully explored in this game. And one of those consequences, non-surprisingly, is him getting killed for what he did. And that, to me, was him getting his just desserts. He honestly, he earned that. He earned to die in that way, where he gets tortured and brutally murdered by this character we don't even see in the first game. Joel's luck ran out. It's in keeping with the theme of everything else in this story, everything else in this world. Your luck eventually runs out, and Joel's luck ran out. That's how it was meant to go. I don't think Joel going out in a blaze of glory to protect Ellie would be keeping in line with what this game's atmosphere is going for. I think that would just come across as just so generic and silly. And I also really loved how they implemented the second playable character story into this game. So the person that kills Joel is this character named Abbey, who is one of the Fireflies that we don't see from the hospital group back at the end of the first game. And she comes back because Joel killed somebody very close to her, and she's like, I'm going to torture the shit out of you, and then I'm going to kill you. And she does so very, very brutally. And I think it's a ballsy as hell move for Naughty Dog to then show you this character that we don't even know murder Joel, and then go in the second half of the game, all right, now you get to play as her. And I loved that. I thought that was so great the way they did that. And to go even further, I enjoyed Abby's storyline more than Ellie's because of the fantastic usage of dramatic irony and how Abby's character arc mirrors Joel's in the first game. If Ellie's story is about losing her humanity, Abby's is about regaining hers. I loved the complicated relationship she has with her ex-boyfriend, Owen, and how that story just agonizingly crawls to its tragic conclusion. I loved how the game humanizes the people we're supposed to hate because they justifiably tortured and killed Joel in the beginning. I loved the growing bond between her and the two kids she rescues and protects. I know this is going to be controversial to say, and this video is already going to be controversial, but I would have been more than fine if we had never gone back to playing as Ellie. And after a while, I actually forgot this game was about Ellie initially. And there even comes a point where you encounter Ellie as a boss. Ellie is like a boss fight in this game, and you're playing as Abbey. And I actually thought, if they actually go through with it and have Abbey kill Ellie, I would actually be alright with that, because Abbey has much more, in my opinion, she has much more justification for killing Joel and killing Ellie than Ellie does for going after Abbey and killing her friends in this game. The themes and storyline being shown off in this game too really aren't all that insightful and are rather generic when put on paper. And I think that's the same with the first Last of Us, where it's a very generic kind of story with a lot of tropes that you've seen before. And in this case, you know, in the part 2, it dwells on very basic bitch tropes like, you know, violence begets violence, and revenge doesn't solve anything, and not letting go of the past has a cost, blah, 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 blah. And it just goes on and on about these things. And yet, because of the fantastic writing and acting and facial animation, it got me. Those things elevate the material to such an enormously high degree, and I feel like it's the same thing applies to the first game, where because the acting was so fantastic, the writing was so stellar, the facial animation was great, the pacing was just on point, it just makes what could have been a generic zombie road movie into this really high caliber, memorable work of art. And I feel the same way about both games. And the part 2 has been getting a lot of criticism for its pacing and structure, and I simply don't agree with it. This game had me completely absorbed from beginning to end. I honestly can't think of the last time I didn't want to take a break from playing just to see the story through to the end. Where when you compare to how I was feeling about Days Gone, where I just had to force myself to keep playing through it, like, oh god, I've made it this far, I need to see it through to the end. But whereas that game just bored the shit out of me and made me want to quit multiple times, I didn't want to stop playing The Last of Us Part 2. If I didn't have prior commitments in my life and didn't need sleep, I would have played this game in one sitting. Honestly, I was that hooked. It was like being removed from a drug, having to put this game down and go to work, having to put this game down and go to sleep, having to put this game down and go do my prior commitments. That is a great sign that Naughty Dog did something right with the pacing of this game. And I also loved the extensive usage of flashbacks and flashbacks within flashbacks, because they gave me short breathers from the action and aggressively ugly violence. There are so many excellent big and small moments throughout the campaign that I just sat there with my jaw slightly open in awe. I was just in awe of what Naughty Dog were able to pull off, and at least 5 times I must have said out loud, this is fucking fantastic. I literally just looked at whether it was like a big explosive scene, whether it was like a really tense fight against a group of nut jobs, a genius usage of subtle facial animation, or one of the small but powerfully tender moments expertly placed throughout this game. I was just lapping it up. I was lapping it up like a kitten laps up milk. I was lapping it up like a kid in a fucking candy store. I really cannot say enough times how much I loved this game, and that makes me so happy. It makes me so happy to say that I absolutely loved The Last of Us Part 2. But what makes me really sad about it is that I completely understand why people are dunking on it so much. I totally get that the creative choices Naughty Dog decided to go with have and will piss off a lot of people. But for me, personally, I loved each and every one of them. I love it when a developer has the balls to go through with controversial narrative decisions like this. Even when they don't work in some cases, you know, hello Mass Effect 3, I respect them for trying, except BioWare in that case. BioWare in that case can fuck off. But in the case of The Last of Us Part 2, I wholeheartedly applaud Naughty Dog for what they've done here. I think what they've done has is just amazing. I think this should be an inspiration to developers to try different, riskier avenues of storytelling. And that's why the negative, such like rapid negative reception that this game has been getting from a group of the fan base is so disheartening to see, because I think more developers should try this, and yet a lot of developers that are normally under the thumb of these publishers that don't want to try new things, that just want to play it safe, will just look at the reception and go, ugh, we don't want that, and then they'll just back off and not even try. But I think stories like The Last of Us Part 2 push this industry forward. It pushes it forward to create riskier things, to create things that are more divisive, that will get people more like engaged with talking about it and debating it. I think that's wonderful. Even if it has resulted in like really ugly shit, I think the effort here needs to be applauded, and I applaud Naughty Dog for what they've done. If I have one serious complaint about the story, it's this: that for me, there was a major disconnect between what the game wanted me to feel during Ellie's story and how I actually felt as a player. If I may use a big boy word, I experienced ludonarrative dissonance. And so Naughty Dog has gone so far over the top in making the violence extreme and gory, and their clear intention, I mean crystal clear intention, is to make you feel uncomfortable and almost overwhelmed by how bleak and brutal it is. I've seen journalists, say that, oh, I just didn't want to keep playing. I just thought it was so horrible that I just wanted to turn it off. Just the violence just made me so sick. And that didn't really work for me for a few reasons. One, aside from a few scenes that actually did make me wince, at this point in my life, I am so desensitized to this kind of high-level violence and gore that it didn't really bother me. Even the moments where you have to kill dogs and hear them cry in pain as they die didn't bother me anywhere near as much as I thought it would. Two, even though Naughty Dog says stupid things like, oh, this game isn't meant to be fun. Oh, we're not trying to make it fun. We're trying to make it serious. It's a fun game. Let's not beat around the bush. The gameplay is designed to be functional in a way that translates to fun. It's just a physical reaction. This is going to make me sound like a psychopath, but I had a blast shotgunning human enemies in the leg and watching them scream in agony as they bleed to death. I laughed out loud every time some stupid enemy stepped into my mind trap and exploded into like a million gory chunks, and you watch as like his torso flies back onto the floor with like his guts hanging out. Like, the graphic violence that I was inflicting on the characters in this game invoked a very different reaction in me compared to the one Naughty Dog was foolishly going for, because it triggered that primal video game violence satisfaction within me. The game goes out of its way multiple times to try to make you feel horrible, but it just doesn't work. And three, there is a big inconsistency with how Ellie reacts to the violence you as a player have a direct hand in inflicting versus her brutal actions in cutscenes. There are scenes where you are torturing and killing key characters from Abbey's storyline, and they trigger moments of PTSD in Ellie. It's effective on the surface level because of Ashley Johnson's like phenomenal performance, but it doesn't make any sense beyond that. Like, if you go that insanely violent route that I went, having her only get worked up over these key characters doesn't really work in the long run when you're leaving piles of bodies in your wake. Like, it doesn't make any sense that Ellie has these PTSD moments and gets so worked up over killing these people when she literally was just like blowing people's heads off and setting dogs on fire literally like a few seconds before that. It's certainly not enough to remove all of the excellent material and emotional impact in Ellie's part of the story, but it's something that I just couldn't ignore the whole time I was playing. It's something that I kept thinking about, and it just kept making me laugh. It's part of why I liked Abby's side of the story more, because there isn't that ludonarrative dissonance. Abbey is a stone cold killer. She knows that. We know that. She accepts it. And she shows very little remorse for her murders throughout almost her entire storyline. And the game never really makes a serious attempt to try to make you feel bad for acting so violently against people. That just isn't there for Abbey's storyline, but it's there in spades for Ellie's, and it just really doesn't work when you stop to think about it. It works in the moment, but beyond that, not really. So that's really the only big complaint I have about the story with The Last of Us Part 2. But beyond that, I adored it. I think this is the strongest video game story in one of these, like, Sony-driven games. Maybe this whole generation. This might be my favorite story in a Sony-developed first-party game released on the PlayStation 4 this generation. I think so. I really think so. And I'll have to maybe think about it more, but I'm going to say something like that's going to piss some people off in a video that's already probably going to piss certain people off. I may have liked this more than the first game. It's been a while. It's been a couple years since I've played the first game, so I'd have to go back and play the first one again to be sure. But remembering what I remember about the first game, I think I liked Part 2 slightly more. And I think this game would be a masterpiece if they had just shaved off maybe 3 to 4 hours of the story. Not the story, but some of the encounters you have, especially with the infected. Maybe remove some of those. Maybe put in some of the scrapped story elements that Neil Druckmann and the actors were talking about, like they had to get rid of. Maybe put some of those back in. I think this game would be a masterpiece. I think this game, like, if they had made those tweaks, would be the best PlayStation 4 exclusive this generation, aside from Persona 5. But I'm talking about Sony developed stuff. I loved The Last of Us Part 2, and I hate that that's a controversial thing to say, but I loved it, and I'm not going to apologize for my opinion. So, yeah. Thank you guys for watching. If you like to see, subscribe. Let me know what you thought about The Last of Us Part 2. I can't wait to read some of those. But, yeah, this might be my favorite game of the year so far. Maybe. It's almost neck and neck between this and Animal Crossing. But I loved it. I loved it far more than I thought I was going to. Because going into this, I was expecting to maybe be completely turned off by the game and its divisive elements and just how I was feeling mentally because of the whole coronavirus situation, like personal stuff. But this game just sunk its claws into me and kept me hooked from beginning to end. And I can't think of the last time a story-driven game just where I was just so absorbed in it that all other, like, time and space just faded in the background, where I was just one with the game. I love The Last of Us Part 2. And I give Naughty Dog and everyone involved in this game a round of applause. I think it is borderline a masterpiece. So, that's it. That's my thought. Those are my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. Alright. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.